Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the largest, fastest growing, and the most active meetup, virtual community globally, large-scale Scrum and Agile and Lean product development. Today we have a special guest to whom I would like to give a shout out. This is Ines Garcia. She's joining us from the UK. Just a few words about Ines. She helps individuals, teams, and organizations to deliver better value and reduce waste, including time waste, effort waste, and materials. She's focused on impact. She always wants to leave a place better from where she found it, and that includes a product, people, and the whole planet. With over a decade of dual work in Agile and Salesforce, Ines has boosted circular economy and biomimicry practices. She is an active contributor to the Scrum Alliance, Agile Alliance, both of the large organizations I'm sure you're familiar with. Business Declares, Donut Economics Action Lab, Work on Climate, and other good organizations out there. Today, she will speak about Agile Sustainability, and she has a special angle at which she will come to this question. So without any further ado, I would like you all welcome Ines. Thank you for joining us from over the pond. For me, at least, I'm here in the United States, but this is a very large global community. So off to you. Please take it away, and thank you once again for doing this.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you for that intro. Now, so how to start with a bit of context. So in 2019, I went on a quest to find organizations that made actually sustainable change. And that journey has brought three things. First, the Sustainable Happy Profit. That's the book of how products and organizations, in fact, can thrive. Two is the Agile Sustainability Manifesto, which is hosted into the Agile Alliance. And that's essentially about how can we evolve our craft and better guide our decisions. And three, the Agile Sustainability Practitioner 4 weeks hands-on program. Now, before I sort of get ahead of myself, I've structured our time together this way with a slide diamond shape. So going beyond diversion and conversion, but also leveling up the playing field, hence this diamond shape. And who doesn't like some liberating structures? So we're going to go through mainly three motions: what, the state of affairs, so what, why it is significant, why it matters, and now what. So that's the action-oriented section, so you can get ready to tackle as soon as you leave this room. I'm sure you heard on the global warming and the rather scary predictions. Some of you may have read the latest IPCC report. We could be looking at GDP and how, in fact, GDP is not a good indicator of a healthy economic system. And how, in fact, GDP is decoupled of the harming emissions, which is a good thing. We could also be looking at multiple different variables and the rate of extinction and the correlation with other things, the Industrial Revolution and other items. But what I really don't want to do is to add into the overload, the overwhelm. In the subject of sustainability, what we have is a really big feedback delay, and as Agile people, well, we know how that works, right? So when I say really feedback delay, think about this. If we had a magic switch to turn off all the greenhouse gas emissions right now, it will take decades, if not centuries, to see the results of what we have already emitted into the atmosphere. So how can we reduce that feedback delay? And I think we as agile practitioners, we should really be asking us some questions, and that's where I wanna tackle next. The question of how will we feed ourselves? And now that's a question for the room, and maybe either put it on the chat or hands up. I'll be interested to know who here somehow their work is related to agriculture. Interesting. This is, and if you're in a hunt of potentially new workplace, agriculture is a broken, complex, adaptive system, and that's where we come in. Because the current food system doesn't work for everyone, and it certainly does not work for the environment. And when I say the current food system, the majority of agriculture today is a petrochemical-based agriculture. And petrochemical agriculture has turned agriculture into a leading source of greenhouse gas emissions and pollution, and is driving extinction of species. I'm personally a permaculture practitioner and very interested in agroforestry. So if you grow your own food, also talk to me about that. But if we think about petrochemical agriculture has huge financial costs, not just in biodiversity, and but also on health. And just if we think of it on a simple math of inputs, land use, water use, pollution, energy require inputs, and also taxpayers' money. Subsidies, right? This is our money that we think is cheaper this way, but actually we're paying for things in the other way. So not only we do not produce food in a way that just doesn't work in the long term, it's not sustainable, doesn't have the ability to sustain, but we also manage to waste almost a third of it, whilst nearly 10% of the world's population goes hungry. So we agile lean practitioners, we know that we can do better. The question of how would we harness energy and how will we store what we learn? Now, and I ask these two questions because I would assume many of us are involved in technology. And for me, over the years, it's becoming obvious that technology is no longer an industry, that it is kind of a fabric layer of any business. And IT, information and technology, needs these two things. So if we are we are uncovering better ways of delivering, developing technology by doing it and helping others to do it, this is how we're doing it so far. Data center power use surged sixfold. We have our grid is already at the stretch and it cannot cope with the forecast. The internet alone, and our work is not just internet, but the internet alone is responsible for almost 4% of the global carbon equivalent emissions. And this is expected to double by next year. Especially AI and quantum computing are really driving the spike in energy use. And we know, we tried, right, keeping data to make better decisions. Just accumulation of data alone, we have tried, but it's not driving us to make better decisions. So if our grid is at capacity and it cannot handle the forecast, the question is, how can we better respond to change? The question of how will we make things? And I ask this question because we, especially in the digital world, often think that digital technology is a sort of an abstract, non-physical thing when we are very bounded to materials and we are bounded by governing laws, natural laws, regardless if we are aware of it or not, regardless if we like it or not. So if in Agile, we aim to increase predictability and control risk, well, here are some risks. We are already at a consumption of a rate of almost 2 planet Earths. And if everybody was behaving and consuming in the way that we do in the tiniest little northwestern side of the world, we would be at a rate of 5 Earths. And also look at this, 99% of the stuff that we buy, trash within 6 months. There is also a fact that really stood with me, which is that there is more gold in e-waste, that stuff like that we no longer use. So there is more gold in e-waste than left on the ground. I mean, what are we doing? So we definitely need to be more lean and more agile. We can't continue at this rate. The question of how will we heal ourselves? And so also question over here, let's say, who, either chat, camera, hands up, who here works somehow related to the healthcare system? That's another one. Yeah, you may go back if you want, I suppose. Because it's one of the fastest growing industries, and that also includes biotech. Yet again, a broken, complex, adaptive system, and that's where we come in. Like, I don't know where to start here, but just, for example, air pollution alone, responsible of 4 million deaths a year, and those are preventable deaths. And I used to be in London, and in London alone, 7,000 of preventable deaths a year. And it's not just pollution, because we know that weather changes has a direct health implications and also fluctuation of diseases. So as practitioners, how can we help such an interdependent and complex industry with huge stresses and demands? Systems thinking? Anyone? And allow me to wrap up the questions part with this one, which is the state of business. How would we conduct business? Because this affects us, each and every one of us, as a stakeholder, as customers, employees, and hopefully active participants of our civic life. And this is really where the focus of my research and work is. I can tell you one thing, and that is that there is a better way to do business. Because our business as usual is the most unusual. Like, the numbers are in, we've seen the air pollution. We have 1 million species that are threatened with extinction. And you can look at this in different ways, but species and land mass provide ecosystem services that maintains our own species life on Earth. We have converted 75% of land that is not covered by ice, and 6 of the 9 greatest threats to the world are directly related to ongoing destruction of nature, and that's destruction made by us, humans, one species. So this is our current state of affairs. We can do better, and we definitely need to be more lean and more agile. So what? So take a minute and think. What is one thing that has come more apparent to you? And how is that one thing related to your work? Now hold that thought. Right. So here is where I introduce you a framework, and we know frameworks can be helpful. Now, on the image here on the left-hand side, this is a visual representation of what's called the planetary boundaries. And it's an information radiator. So if we look at it, we can see that anything that within the green area, we are operating within our safe space. Anything that goes beyond that green area, the farther we go, the worse it gets. Well, we're operating beyond our safe operating space. And I'm not going to lie, this doesn't look good, but let's not go into despair, because in fact, we have tackled these things in the past. We have tackled these things successfully in the past at global level. For example, the ozone layer. And that's a success story that I think is worth reminding ourselves. We can do it at the size and the speed that is required if we put the focus in the right place. So this one side, and in the other side over here, what we have is the SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals. That's 17 global goals, legally binding goals, some of which are, yes, related to the planetary boundaries here on the left, and some of which are what's called social capital related. Now, if we combine these two things, this is really where I introduce you the framework that you may have come across, which is combining the two things, and is called donut economics. And it's called donut economics because it looks like a donut. We have our outer layer, which is an ecological ceiling. We cannot surpass our safe operating space. And then we have the inner circle, which is the social foundation. So we don't want to leave people behind in terms of access of water, food, quality, education, voice, social equity, and so on. So there in that QR code, if you're interested, you can scan. There is a little story and a way for you to apply these things. Now, this framework is collaborative, adaptive, and holistic approach to economic development. Economic development that accounts for the real world, right? Not based on abstract, incomplete concepts. And just quickly to tell you a story, now when we take these big ideas to put them in practice, it doesn't have to be grandiose, overly complex, right? Here, what we have few snaps of a session last year that I facilitated. So we appended this from an existing conference, and that was all based on the tangible application for facilitators on donut economics framework with more than 70 attendees. And again, the message that I'm trying to bring here is that these sessions does not have to be an all-day thing. They can be incremental and iterative, right? Start small and learn fast. And so often in the subject of sustainability, we have these two angles, right? We try to see the world of, oh, it's a politics or it's a population, meaning population, what can we do at the individual level that even make a sense or a different, or should be policies and laws. And we know that those are too slow and have loopholes. So yes, and right, this is some of the moments that we can hold two thoughts in one space, but also what is becoming over the years and through my research more and more clear is that bang in the middle, what we have is a great entity, a great structure that can enable the change that's needed, and that's organizations, companies, right? Think about this. We have 249 country codes versus 333 million companies, registered companies worldwide. That's a huge potential for evolving our practice. How do we behave as species in big numbers and to make a dent in a positive manner? The good thing is that organizations, companies are composed of individuals, and we can do both. We can do good and we can do well. In fact, it's more rewarding. Not only that, but we are incredibly privileged for being here today, but also because as Agilists, we have access and we have ease. Access to key areas of the organization and ease in terms of skills, tools already under our belt. System thinking, change enablers, facilitators. So I did say I went on a quest. I did go on a quest in 2019 because I wanted to make my own company better, one person LTD, with the idea that if I could downscale these big ideas, then I could upscale, side scale to others. And going through the motions of all that research over the years, there were few patterns that surfaced. I also have to admit that the journey was really tough. It was tough to see that narratives and operations were quite dissonant. With that, I mean greenwashing. I say one thing, but I do another. And that's really where all the ones that I did find of the ones that actually embedded sustainability within the fabric of their business, very clear patterns, strategies, mechanisms surface. And that's really where the sustainable happy profit came to light. So for me to be able to share those learnings, the specifics, mechanisms beyond one customer, one session, one talk at a time. So what I would like to do now is take you through 3 different industries, companies, examples from that quest, a little bit at lightning speed, looking at the time. First, this is an energy company. And within 10 years, they managed to turn around their source of energy production from 80 fossil the other way around, right? So actually closer to 85 renewables today. And that's within 10 years, with huge operations already providing energy almost to 10 million people and expected by 50 million by 2030. And doing so also increase market share and profit. So one of the things, bye Marisa, that they did that I think is worth mentioning is that they anchored, right? They anchored so they could change course. And multiple different initiatives, but one of them I think we forget sometimes about is the commissioning thing. Right? So they took an asset inventory list, and every single end of life was taken as an opportunity for better. For better, I mean for replacement, refeed, repurpose, recycle, right? To take their decision, informed decision towards where they wanted their organization to go. And that, again, just being one of the initiatives. So really, for me, what this shouts is valuing, adapting to change. Example 2, which this is servicing. So I try to take different industries. It's actually financial services company that the figures speak for themselves. What's called ethical portfolios perform better. Imagine if all portfolios were ethical by default. Anyway, and specifically for them, what became more apparent that yes, they are to halve their emissions by 2030, like we all are. Paris Agreement legally binding target, halve our emissions by as country as a village, as a local area, as weekend activity, as product department organization, right? Half our emissions as household. Yes, they were to halve their emissions, but also became apparent that they could have a greatest impact as well as on focusing on niche funding. And that's a question I think we should be asking ourselves in our type of work. Yes, halving our emissions. Yes, leaving the place better, biosphere, thinking about space, use of woods and whatever else. But also, where is our space where we can have the most impact? And one of the things that they did, also few partnership, one with more than 150 different companies, like imagine trying to organize that. But for me, that calls, including the WWF, is that it's not just about valuing customer collaboration, but also the whole value chain collaboration. And that's really in line with the Sustainable Development Goal 17, which is partnership for the goals. And we know in the room partnership towards the same common goal, we know what a lever that can be. And example 3, which is manufacturing. So again, try to give you a flavor of different things here. So this manufacturing company managed to reduce their absolute emissions by 70%. And again, huge operations, almost, well, 930 million operation revenues a year. Some example as well into how they reduce the material usage. But mainly what I want to highlight here is they basically create their own framework, right? That was based on giving the space and supporting everybody to be a problem solver, right? So coming together and reaching each other's ideas. Again, supporting is easier said than done. So I am certain here in the room, we have many examples when we, in fact, value those individuals and interactions over. Okay, cool. So hopefully you're ready to tackle the problem at hand, the challenge and the quest that we are on together. But you are going to face resistance. And what I want to do now is equip you how to fight the most common myths. So over the years for me, there are some patterns of excuses coming through. For example, why care? Because people don't care really. Well, in fact, 75% of the workforce would refuse to work for an organization that doesn't have corporate social responsibility, social and environmental responsibility. So that's your workforce employees. So people do care. People do care because customers are willing to pay more. And investors are eager to find those ethical portfolios. So for the ones that read, and remember the About section of the Agile Manifesto, building the types of organization communities in which we would want to work for, to be part of. We also have the myth that you're most likely gonna get confronted of like, ooh, this sounds expensive. And it may come with many flavors. We don't have funds allocated or budget and, you know, the like excuses. But let's look at this, right? Because renewables are cheaper. From last year, it's official. But not only that, cheaper on comparison of kilowatt hour, but also is cheaper because it reduces long-term costs, maintenance, extraction costs, transportation. And again, we don't tend to think about those sorts of things. So that's energy. But also if we think about materials, right? We've seen some of the figures. 90% of the materials are wasted. So imagine if you bring them back into your value chain. What a saving. Imagine if you don't put them there to start with. What a saving. So what is expensive? And then, so energy, materials, and also this concept of regeneration. So we talk about agriculture and, for example, this idea of regenerative agriculture. not only reduces greenhouse gas emissions, also sequesters carbon, increases biodiversity, improves water, air quality, and also generates higher returns. And last but not least, you create a resilient system, and you tend to do this by some redundancy. And the ones in tech, we know how redundancy can play good in our service and designs. So if one crop fails, because we can't predict the weather, you can still feed your nation. I mean, those are basic stuff that we really need to put effort to work out at massive scale. So it's not expensive. For me, this really calls to harnessing change for competitive advantage, energy, materials, regeneration, leaving things in a better state. The myth of, oh, we are bounded to political and market systems, which in disguise may come as, oh, there is no point to do anything because I don't have enough influence. Political systems respond to people. And through history, we have examples of successfully overcome at extraordinary odds to achieve political change. So really, it is worth reminding ourselves we've done it in the past, we can do it again. The myth of, well, but what about growth and profit, right? But let's look where growth and profits is going, because just with floods, and again, I just selected here some figures of 2019, Midwest, the US, the floods between 50 to 60 million in the first quarter of the year, literally down the drain. And for every 1% increase of heavy rainfall, we lose almost 2% of GDP. So that is where growth and profit are. So that's water. Then we think of fires. And again, it's not only in California, it's happening in many places, close, far, everything in between. But just the example of California wiped out a quarter-century profits for the insurance industry. And we know some places becoming uninsurable. So, and again, at global level, 1% of global GDP lit up in flames. So that's growth and profit. And don't forget about shortages. I think it's becoming more and more obvious that we have very weak value chains, war, conflict, epidemics, supply logistics problem like Panama Canal and so on. And here's some example of car companies that they literally had to shut operations because they didn't have parts. So how are we better responding to change? And if at regular intervals, as a team, as an organization, we are to reflect how to become more effective and then tune and adjust accordingly, we are missing a big part of the picture. And the last of my top 5 of myths is that, ooh, this sounds too complex. I mean, yes, we're talking about the biosphere, but this is what is up for grabs. 12 trillion just by achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. So if our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of value, this is it. Start small and learn fast. And also remember that not long ago, we managed to turn things around at a fraction of the time and at the speed and the size magnitude that we just wouldn't have thought possible otherwise. All right, so I wanted to show you this concept, carbon tunnel vision. Again, I think visuals are so powerful to describe and emerge information. So here, this visual is a great way to depict the current state of affairs, right? So when we are looking at the challenge as agile people, we know we have this tendency to look at quite narrow way. And with all sustainability, yes, we are to halve our carbon emissions, but there are many other variables that we need to account for, like biodiversity loss, we have to acknowledge and tackle our overconsumption. So in complex adaptive systems like our biosphere, there are more to consider just the common sort of inertia when looking at the problem. And especially when you start looking at your value chain, we tend to fall complacent, especially on the value chain. And the golden rule here is when something is too good to be true, probably is. So I support this organization called Stop the Traffic, and their sole mission is prevention of human trafficking and modern slavery. And it's closer than you think. It's in our food chains, it's in the energy, materials, devices, the clothes that we wear, the stuff that we use, and it's also in our healthcare system. So my question to you now is, what is one thing that's more clear? And how is that one thing related to your work? So I couldn't get a guesstimate from Jim, but we can do a guesstimate together. So maybe pop the industry that you work on in the chat. Okay, transport, I would guess some professional services as well. Oh, nice. Insurance. Wow, you just brought up our millions here. All right. So I would imagine how many do we have? Okay. So we must be at least 50 million on annual revenues. And I'm just going in the low guesstimates, right? So just here amongst us, 50 million potential tapping. And this is a conservative estimate, right? Of us sitting in the virtual room right now, of an opportunity that we can tap into. So if we put our head and heart and efforts in the right place, we can make a dent and a positive impact. Also in the bottom line. So, right, imagine a world where we keep to the core, the people, the planet, the purpose, and we do that by design, right? Shifting left. How if we, agile professionals, take up a notch and extend our practice? And also, really, for me, this quote really let's just put the money where we want the world to go. It's simple, as powerful as that. Let's put the money, let's put our mind, heart, efforts there too. I can share, if you guys are interested, some of my impact reports. Again, I'm one person LTD. There is a better way to do business. And with this idea where we put the money, especially for the ones in the financial industry over here, right? There are three very tangible things that you can do today. First, check out your bank. You can use things like bank.green to work out how is your bank performing. Because after the Paris Agreement, the top 60 private sectors pump extra 5.5 trillions into the fossil fuels. And it's like, but have you not just seen what's happened? And at personal level, at household level, and at company level, I have changed my banks, which you can do too. And you can also influence in your organization. Also pensions, we don't tend to think about pensions, but pension is money. And think about this, that 10 pounds here in the UK, every 10 pounds you put into your pension, at least 2 are linked with deforestation. You can use organizations like Make My Money Matter. They make it so easy, like 2 clicks, to send a letter to your pension provider to tell them to stop funding fossil deforestation and rather worrying industries. And then last, insurance, right? And again, I'll be interested to hear from some of you really struggling to find insurance at this level, 1% LTD, with transparent and ethical portfolios to tap into. So where do we want the world to go? Let's put the money there. Now, circular economy, and again, we don't have much time to go into details, but I find with the work that I do in advisory and professional services that it really helps to downscale these big ideas into, okay, so how are we going to design our features, our business, our products? Right? And I think it goes hand in hand with lean and agile quite well. In essence, circular economy is moving us away from our very diminishing economic model, which is very linear. We take stuff from Earth, we make stuff with that, and then we waste it. Take, make, waste. And instead, we move into, hence the name, a circular way where we're keeping those products and materials in use, right? Refuse, reduce, reuse, repair. And those are principles that can guide our decisions. In fact, there are multiple different models of this, the 9R, the 11R, the 7Rs, whatever, you get the idea. But the 3 main principles are those, right? Keep products and materials in use. So here, this is what's called the butterfly diagram from Eller MacArthur Foundation. And when we tend to think it's on the right-hand side, sort of the mechanical way to create products, where we want to keep that product for longer, like, so give it another life, repair it, and whatever else, as you can see on the right-hand side, is recycled. And it's the very last option in this visual because it's the most expensive thing you can do in terms of inputs, transport, and processing, and whatever else. And then on the left-hand side, what you have is the biological side of the equation. Again, whatever we do in one side, we govern by natural laws, it's going to have a biological impact. But also when you start looking at these things, you may see sort of byproducts, like here in the image is a biogas sort of byproduct from their processes. And just recently for me, with a customer, we managed to release 2 more revenue lines by looking at stuff like that. How can we keep products and materials in use for as long as possible? The principle of waste, reducing waste and pollution. And again, here, I'm showing you something that I'm sure you've seen many times. The first time I published this was in 2021 with the book, is value stream mapping. I mean, we have the tools at hand. But the thing is, with the olden days value stream mapping, we only look at one variable. We make so much effort to put all these people together, so many days, blah, blah, blah. And we only look at reducing waste of one variable, the variable of time. But what if we enrich, take our practice up a notch, and as well as time, we reduce waste of transport, materials, energy, pollution. So I've been doing some work with one of the biggest utilities companies here in the UK. And when we looked at streamlining our, essentially the returns process, that led us to see the physical and material impact into their warehouses, which not only drove the resell potential of staff there doing nothing, but also the warehouse cost reduction. We have the tools already. And then the principle 3 of circular economy, which is regenerate natural systems. And this idea that the solutions are already here, that they have been fine-tuned over the last 3.8 billion years of existence. Right? That the solutions are in the living beings, not around us, not in the fossils. Right? So essentially, this is biomimicry. If you're interested, there is a QR code that I tell you a little bit more about. This idea of innovation inspired by nature, and with the core of creating conditions that are conducive to life And that for me really aligns with this idea of continuous attention to technical excellence and good design by default, shifting left. So I tell you all this of circular economy, one, because I find it very helpful on downscaling. I'm one of the circular economy from Cambridge University. But really the message here is that it is our responsibility, that remember our privilege because we have access and we have ease. So where do you want the world to go? How do you want to be part of it? What's between then and now? And therefore, what's next? So 3 things aligning speed that you can do now. First, if you haven't yet, please head over the Agile Sustainability Manifesto. Check it out. It's hosted in the Agile Alliance and put your name on it. Take the pledge. But most importantly, leverage the principles to guide our decisions. I mean, it's more than 20, 30 years going on with this. It's really time for us to take our craft up a notch. Second thing, head over the Green Software Foundation. You have things like the impact framework already available for you and for your team to tap into. I'm one of the Green Software Foundation champions. And even if you are not in IT, in the QR code there, you can access a free course as hosted in Linux Foundation, but it's a green course, a free course on green software. And it's really going to give you of this idea of, because technology is in the fabric layer of any business, is well worth sort of base level to open awareness of the things and wider understanding that we can do very simply to start reducing that pressure that we're putting into our biosphere. And then 3, well, come and join us. So we put this coalition of the willing together, just agile people in our own time, freelancers. And really what this is bridging the gap from theoretical agreement, we should do something, to tangible, impactful action, right? So that's 4 weeks. Yes, we'll cover circular economy, sustainable development goals, complexity science, but also practice on your context, right? So you live with that experience, really moving this idea of urgency into agency. And as agile people, we know the step into one to the other is often the hardest step in any change. I need to do something to, this is how. Next one up that I have set is March 25. So hurry. And I would like to close with this thought. This is home. There are no boundaries. We all breathe the same air. This is our home, which is not ours alone.
Ines, are you willing to take some questions now, or because we have 5 minutes before we have to close? We have a few people on the bridge. Perhaps you would like to, Sean, Doug, Chris, do you have any questions you would like to pose to Ines? I think you're mute or very the volume is very low, Sean. Is that you speaking? Yeah.
Can you guys hear me good?
I can hear you, Chris.
Great.
So that's
Ines, I know we're coming up to the top of the hour. Ines, what a wonderful talk, what a wonderful topic laid out so well. Having some of the lean and some of the agile principles and techniques, right, added into what you're doing is, of interest to us as practitioners. Something, maybe you cover this in your workshops, or maybe you might even want to add a powerful, even one slide here, is to frame some of your myths and how to talk to people and how the Coalition of the Willing can talk to executives and middle managers and put that in terms of software. So kind of flip it rather than adding agile and lean to sustainability efforts, talk about adding some of the principles of sustainability efforts into our workplaces where we're trying to add agile and lean. So that might be things like talking about the benefits for everyone, driving metrics to show success, bringing a mindset that it's more possible, bringing the mindset that, you know, we have to do it to save ourselves. There's little bits of this in like the safe training curriculum and in lean training, but it might be cool if you added some of the software aspects to this. I don't know if that made any sense, Gene.
It does. Thank you very much. Actually, give you +1. Thank you for that feedback, and of course, humble thank you to Ines for putting this great presentation. Sean, Doc, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
Perfect. So a question for Inez. One challenge I see in applying this at my work is it's a very large organization, and oftentimes the costs are abstracted away from the actual work that I'm doing. For example, our cloud computing costs. We certainly could reduce like our computing footprint, but we oftentimes don't have line of sight into what's the budget, what's the utilization. And, I could go continuing down just listing off different examples, but how, as a, without a comprehensive full view on the value stream, how do you recommend making your impact, bringing up and showcasing the opportunity to improve sustainability?
And thank you both. And actually, I'm answering with the same thing. So I just put in the chat the link. So in the Agile Alliance Sustainability Initiative, we have a section that is quick start. One entry I think is probably worth for both subjects is the digital cleanup. So this is literally one example of how much money can you save. And also a breakdown of things to do. So how do you assess, how you monitor, and what are the different things? And we're only thinking about digital cleanup, but for example, again, not long ago, doing some software Salesforce related architecture, a conversation of 15 minutes, 15 minutes review of a costume app, it reduced the objects by half, and therefore the processing almost by 70%. Who doesn't have 15 minutes? That also is going to make your maintenance and enhancements of that application so much easier. I mean, the other thing as well is, I think it's important, especially as Agile people, we understand the system that we operate within. So sometimes it's better not to say anything, cheaper way, and then people get interested, like not saying Agile whatsoever, and they're like, oh, what's happening with this team? And then, and also, we don't have to ask for permission. Again, you understand your system better, but sometimes grassroots can make a big impact, and sometimes you don't want to talk about it, and that's fine.
Thank you. Yeah. And thanks for the link.
I have lots of links. So if you guys are really interested on any of the things that I talked, more and more of my work goes towards sustainability. I think I'm easy to find. So
Ines, if I may ask you kindly, as soon as we get off, if you have time to, immediately or later on, shortly thereafter, if you don't mind sharing some of your references and assets so I can fairly include them as I circulate the recording. And so I would like to give you enough visibility, you personally, as well as your great work. So if you have any links and also this presentation, this great slide deck, if you can send me a PDF slide deck, I will be happy to turn this into an asset, and obviously the whole credit goes back to you.
Right, there you go. In the chat, it's a slightly lighter version there for you already, just in time.
Okay, you just dropped it here and go. That's great too. Let's see if I can copy and paste, because once I close the window,
I can put it in LinkedIn as well.
it would be nice if you, if you send me in LinkedIn, that would be great.
All right. Well, thank you for spending this time with me. You're in between my beer, so I'm gonna say bye-bye.
Thank you very much once again. It's a great pleasure having you here. Gentlemen, Sean, Curtis, thank you for being here as well. And all be well and have a great weekend. Cheers.
Thank you to be
Bye,
part of the
guys.
solution.
Bye.